My aunt said I'd never amount to anything like my cousin, so I bought the house she'd been trying to afford for years. For 23 years, Aunt Marlene had weaponized every family gathering to remind me how perfect Bethany was. Bethany got into Harvard. Bethany landed the corporate job. Bethany married the surgeon. Meanwhile, I was the family disappointment, a college dropout working as a dog walker. Maybe if you applied yourself like Bethany, Aunt Marlene would say, gesturing toward her daughter's engagement photos, you wouldn't be living paycheck to paycheck. What she didn't know was that I'd been quietly building a dog-walking empire. Started with 3 clients. Now I manage 40 employees across 5 cities. While Bethany was drowning in student loans and working 80-hour weeks for a boss who screamed at her, I was pulling in 6 figures doing what I loved. The Victorian on Maple Street had been Aunt Marlene's obsession since I was 12. She'd drive past it every Sunday after church, sighing about the bay windows and wraparound porch. Someday, she'd promise herself, when Bethany gets settled and can help with the down payment. Last month, the house went on the market. Aunt Marlene spent weeks preparing her loan application, certain her government pension and Bethany's co-signature would seal the deal. I made a cash offer that afternoon. The closing was yesterday. This morning I drove to Aunt Marlene's house with the deed in my hand and knocked on her door. "What are you doing here?" she asked, clearly annoyed. I smiled. "I wanted to show you something." I handed her the deed. Her face went white as she read my name listed as the new owner. "This is impossible," she whispered. "You don't have this kind of money." "Actually, I do. Turns out walking dogs pays pretty well when you know what you're doing." She stumbled backward. "But that was supposed to be my house. Bethany and I had plans." "Speaking of Bethany," I interrupted, "has she mentioned her little problem at work?" Aunt Marlene frowned. "What problem?" I pulled out my phone and showed her the news article I'd bookmarked. Bethany's company was under FBI investigation for embezzlement. 3 executives had been arrested yesterday, including one junior associate who'd been helping them hide assets. "That's not," Aunt Marlene started. "Page 3 mentions her by name," I said gently. "She's been cooperating with federal investigators for 6 months. Apparently, she's been feeding them information in exchange for immunity." The color drained from her face completely. "But there's more," I continued. "Bethany's husband filed for divorce last week. Seems he found out about her affair with her boss. The same boss who's now facing 20 years in federal prison." Aunt Marlene gripped the doorframe. "You're lying." I shrugged. "Call her yourself," though she might not answer. "She's been staying at the Motel 6 on Highway 9 since her husband changed the locks." As I walked back to my car, I heard her sobbing inside. My phone buzzed with a text from Bethany. "Please help me. I have nowhere else to go." But what she didn't know was that the FBI investigation had been triggered by an anonymous tip. Someone had sent them detailed financial records showing exactly how the embezzlement scheme worked. That someone was me. I stared at Bethany's text for a long moment before deleting it without responding. 3 more messages came through in rapid succession. "I know we've never been close, but I'm desperate. Mom won't return my calls. Dennis froze all our accounts. I can pay you back once this is over." The irony wasn't lost on me. For over 2 decades, I'd listened to Aunt Marlene lecture me about responsibility, success, and making something of myself. Now her perfect daughter was begging the family failure for help. My phone rang. "Aunt Marlene, you have to help her," she said without preamble, her voice thick with tears. "She's your cousin." "Is she?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Because for the past 23 years, you've made it pretty clear that we're nothing alike, that she's everything I'm not. This isn't the time for petty grievances." "Petty?" I laughed. "Aunt Marlene, you spent my entire childhood telling me I was worthless. You missed my high school graduation because Bethany had a tennis match. You didn't come to my wedding because it conflicted with her engagement party. When Dad died, you told Mom maybe it was for the best since he never got to see me succeed at anything." Silence on the other end. "But you know what the real kicker is?" I continued. "I sent those financial records to the FBI 2 years ago. Not last week. Not last month. 2 years ago." I heard her sharp intake of breath. See, I've been watching Bethany's career very carefully. When she got that promotion to junior associate, I did some digging. Turns out her boss, Richard Caldwell, had a pattern. Young female employees who needed money, who were vulnerable. He'd offer them opportunities to make extra cash on the side. "You're lying," Aunt Marlene whispered. "I hired a private investigator. Found out Bethany had been skimming money from client accounts for 18 months. Small amounts at first, then bigger and bigger chunks. She thought she was being clever, hiding it in offshore accounts." I pulled into the parking lot of my company's headquarters, a gleaming glass building I'd purchased 6 months earlier. The sign read, "Possum Pet Services," in elegant gold lettering. The thing is, I could have stopped it earlier, could have warned her. But you know what I remembered every time I thought about picking up the phone? Aunt Marlene was crying again. "I remembered my 16th birthday. You threw Bethany a huge party 2 weeks later for getting into Honor Society. Cost you $3,000. You know what you got me? A card that said, 'Maybe next year you'll have something to celebrate.' That was a long time ago. Or, how about when I started my business? You laughed. Said I'd be bankrupt within 6 months. When I bought my first house, you said I'd probably lose it in foreclosure. When I got married, you bet Mom $20 we wouldn't last a year." I stepped out of my car and headed toward the building. 3 of my employees waved from the reception area. "But here's what really gets me, Aunt Marlene. The FBI investigation I triggered? It's going to save Bethany's life." "What do you mean?" "Because if she hadn't gotten caught now, she would have stolen even more. Richard was planning to pin everything on her and disappear with the money. I found emails proving it. She was being set up to take the fall for his entire operation." I swiped my keycard and entered the building. My assistant, Crystal, handed me a stack of messages and my coffee. So by turning her in, I actually saved her from 30 years in federal prison, instead of the 5 to 7 she's looking at now with cooperation. 5 to 7 years? Aunt Marlene's voice was barely a whisper. Oh, did she not mention that part? Yeah, cooperation with the FBI doesn't mean immunity. It means a reduced sentence. She's still going to prison, Aunt Marlene, just not for as long as she would have. I settled into my office chair and pulled up my laptop. 47 new client requests since yesterday. Now, about this help she's asking for. What exactly did you have in mind? She needs money for a lawyer, a place to stay, food. I see. And what makes you think I should provide any of that? Because family helps family. I laughed so hard I snorted. Family helps family? Where was that philosophy when I was 22 and eating ramen noodles for dinner every night? When I asked you for a loan to buy my first commercial van and you said it was throwing good money after bad? That was different. No, it wasn't different. It was exactly the same. Family member asking for help. The only difference is which family member. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a folder I'd been keeping for 2 years. Inside were photocopies of every email, every bank statement, every piece of evidence I'd compiled about Bethany's embezzlement. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice steady and calm. Bethany is going to face the consequences of her actions. Just like I had to face the consequences of mine when I dropped out of college. Just like I had to face the consequences when my first business failed. Just like I had to face them when I lost my job and had to start over walking dogs. But she's in real trouble. And whose fault is that? Aunt Marlene was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was small. I know I wasn't always fair to you. Wasn't always fair? I stood up and walked to my office window, looking out at the city where I now employed dozens of people and generated millions in revenue. Aunt Marlene, you spent 23 years telling me I was worthless, that I'd never amount to anything, that I was an embarrassment to the family. I was trying to motivate you. No, you were trying to make yourself feel better about your own failures by putting me down. You never worked a day after high school. You married Uncle Frank for his government pension and spent 30 years as a housewife criticizing everyone else's choices. I could hear her sharp intake of breath. And you raised Bethany to believe she was entitled to everything without having to earn it. You paid for her car, her apartment, her tuition. You got her the internship at Richard's firm through your church connections. You handed her everything on a silver platter and then acted like she was some kind of genius for succeeding. That's not true, isn't it? Tell me one thing Bethany ever earned entirely on her own. One thing she achieved without your help or connections. Silence. That's what I thought. I sat back down and opened my computer. Time to check on the Victorian house. I'd had a contractor evaluate it this morning. With some renovations, it would make the perfect headquarters for my expanding business. You know what the saddest part is? I continued. If you had just treated me with basic respect, I would have helped her. If you had called me 2 years ago and said, Bethany's in trouble, can you help? I probably would have found a way to get her out of this mess before it got this bad. It's not too late. Yes, it is. Because this isn't really about Bethany. This is about 23 years of you treating me like I was less than human. This is about you teaching your daughter that some people matter and some people don't. This is about consequences, Aunt Marlene. And sometimes consequences take a long time to arrive, but they always arrive. My assistant knocked on the door. I gestured for her to come in. Mr. Patterson, the contractors are here about the Victorian house, Crystal said. They want to discuss the renovation timeline. And tell them I'll be right there, I said. Then back to the phone. I have to go. I'm turning my dream house into my corporate headquarters. Funny how things work out. Please, Aunt Marlene whispered. She's my only child. And I'm Mom's only child. Didn't stop you from treating me like garbage for my entire life. I hung up. Crystal was waiting by my desk with a worried expression. Is everything okay? Family drama, I said, grabbing my jacket. Some people think they can treat you terribly for decades and then expect you to come running when they need help. Oh, I hate that, she said, following me toward the elevator. My brother does the same thing, ignores me completely unless he needs money. What do? I tell him that respect is earned, not demanded, she said with a shrug. If he wants my help, he needs to start treating me like family instead of like an ATM. I smiled. Remind me to give you a raise. The contractors were waiting in the lobby. Tom Henderson, the project manager, was someone I'd hired for several previous renovations. He knew my standards and my budget. Patterson, he said with a grin, shaking my hand. Congratulations on the house. That Victorian is a beauty. Thanks. What are we looking at for timeline and costs? We walked outside where his crew was unloading equipment. Tom pulled out a tablet and showed me the preliminary plans. 6 months for full renovation. Kitchen, bathrooms, flooring, electrical, plumbing. We can convert the first floor into office space and keep the second floor as residential if you want. Perfect. What about cost? $200,000, give or take. But you'll have a showpiece when we're done. That house has good bones. I nodded. $200,000 was pocket change now, but 5 years ago it would have been impossible. Funny how your perspective changes when you go from struggling to successful. My phone buzzed with another text from Bethany. I'll do anything, please. I showed it to Tom. My cousin, she's in some legal trouble and wants me to bail her out. Family, he said with a knowing look. Can't live with them, can't shoot them. The thing is, she spent our whole lives treating me like I was beneath her. Now that she needs help, suddenly we're close family. Tom shrugged. My dad always said you teach people how to treat you. If you let them walk all over you once, they'll expect to do it forever. Smart man. He was. Also said that sometimes the best thing you can do for someone is let them face the consequences of their choices. Builds character. We spent the next hour going through the renovation plans. Tom's crew was going to start demo work tomorrow. In 6 months, I'd have a beautiful corporate headquarters in the house Aunt Marlene had dreamed about for decades. As I was getting ready to leave, my phone rang again. This time it was Mom. Hey, I said, answering on the third ring. I heard about Bethany, she said without preamble. Marlene called me crying. I figured she would. She says you're refusing to help. That's not exactly accurate, I said, walking back to my car. I'm refusing to bail her out of a mess she created for herself. That's the same thing. No, it's not. Helping would be finding her a good lawyer and supporting her through the legal process. Bailing her out would be pretending this never happened and enabling her to continue making terrible choices. Mom was quiet for a moment. She's family, so am I. That's different. How is it different? You're strong. You've always been able to take care of yourself. I stopped walking. Mom, do you remember when I was 25 and asked you for a loan to buy my second van? Vaguely. You said no because Aunt Marlene told you I was irresponsible with money. You said if Bethany needed a loan, that would be different because she was reliable. I don't remember saying that. I do. I remember it perfectly. Just like I remember when Bethany's car broke down and you gave her $3,000 for a new one without her even asking. When my car broke down, you told me it was a good opportunity to learn about public transportation. Silence. I'm not angry about it anymore, I continued, but I want you to understand something. I learned to be strong because I had to, because no one was coming to rescue me. Bethany never learned to be strong because someone always rescued her. That's the difference. So you're just going to let her suffer? I'm going to let her experience the natural consequences of her actions, the same way I had to when I made mistakes. I reached my car and got in, putting the phone on speaker. Besides, I added, it's not like she's homeless and starving. She has a college degree. She can get a job. She can rent an apartment. She can figure it out the same way millions of other people do when their lives fall apart. But the legal fees, she can get a public defender, or she can sell some of those expensive clothes and jewelry she's always showing off on social media. You've really thought this through, Mom said, and I couldn't tell if she was impressed or disturbed. I've had 2 years to think about it. 2 years? I realized I'd said too much. Nothing. Never mind. No, what did you mean by 2 years? I sighed. There was no point in hiding it now. I'm the one who turned her into the FBI. The silence on the other end stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Mom, you what? I found out she was embezzling money and I reported it to the authorities. But why? Because it was the right thing to do. And because I was tired of watching her get away with everything while I got criticized for breathing too loudly at family dinners. Oh my God. Look, she was going to get caught eventually. At least this way she gets cooperation credit and a reduced sentence. You destroyed her life? No, she destroyed her life. I just made sure she couldn't destroy other people's lives in the process. I started the car and pulled out of the parking lot. The afternoon traffic was light, which was good because I needed to get back to the office for a meeting with my accountant. Mom, can I ask you something? I guess. Do you remember my college graduation from community college? Of course. No, you don't. Because you didn't come. You went to Bethany's sorority formal instead. That was... Do you remember my wedding? Yes. What color was my dress? Silence. It was blue, Mom. Navy blue. I wore navy blue because I knew you'd be comparing me to Bethany's white wedding dress, and I wanted to avoid that completely. But you spent the entire reception talking about how Bethany's wedding would be so much more elegant. I know you didn't mean to hurt me. That's what makes it worse. Hurting me was so natural, so automatic that you didn't even realize you were doing it. I pulled into my office parking lot and sat in the car for a moment. The thing is, I don't need your approval anymore. I don't need Aunt Marlene's approval. I don't need anyone in this family to validate my choices or my success. I built this life despite all of you, not because of any of you. That's not fair, isn't it? Name one time in the last 10 years when anyone in this family celebrated my success. When my business hit its first $1 million in revenue, I called to tell you. You said that was nice and then spent 20 minutes talking about Bethany's promotion. I got out of the car and headed toward the building. I'm not trying to punish anyone, I said. I'm just done pretending that we're a close, supportive family when we're not. I'm done pretending that I owe Bethany anything when she's never done anything for me. And I'm definitely done being guilted into cleaning up messes that other people created. So what happens now? Now Bethany faces the consequences of her actions. She goes to court, probably pleads guilty, serves her time, and hopefully learns something from the experience. She's 31 years old, Mom. It's time for her to grow up. And what about the family? What about it? Are you just going to cut us all off? I thought about that for a moment. I'm not cutting anyone off, but I'm also not going to pretend that we have relationships we don't actually have. If you want to have a real relationship with me, one based on mutual respect and genuine interest in my life, I'm open to that. But if you just want someone to solve problems and provide money when things go wrong, you're going to be disappointed. I reached my office and stopped outside the door. I have to go, I have a meeting. Wait, Mom said. Can I see your house sometime? The Victorian? I was surprised by the question. Why? Because I'd like to know more about your life. Your real life. Not just the version Marlene talks about. Sure, I said after a moment. Give me a few weeks to get the renovation started, and then you can come for a tour. I'd like that. After I hung up, I sat in my car for a few more minutes. My phone buzzed with yet another text from Bethany. This one just said, please. I deleted it and went inside. My accountant, Patricia Williams, was waiting in the conference room with spreadsheets covering the table. She'd been managing my finances since the business really took off, and she was one of the few people who knew exactly how successful I'd become. Good afternoon, she said with a smile. Ready to talk numbers? Always. She opened her laptop and projected the quarterly reports onto the wall screen. First, congratulations. This was your best quarter yet. Revenue up 32%, profit margins holding steady at 18%. I nodded, looking at the charts. 5 years ago, I would have been thrilled to make in a year what I now made in a month. The expansion into Portland and Seattle is paying off exactly as projected, Patricia continued. We should be able to add Denver and Phoenix by the end of next year if the current trends continue. What about the commercial real estate investments? Excellent returns. The strip mall in Riverside is fully leased and generating 12% annually. The office building downtown is at 95% occupancy, and now with the Victorian House, you'll have a prestigious headquarters that will probably appreciate significantly over the next decade. I smiled. My aunt wanted that house for 30 years. Well, now it's yours. And speaking of family, Patricia raised an eyebrow. I saw the news about your cousin's company. Caldwell and Associates was one of our potential clients last year. Really? We ultimately decided not to work with them. Something felt off about their books. Too many international transactions, too many vague expense categories. Interesting. I assume this doesn't affect your family relationships? I laughed. Patricia, my family relationships were already pretty complicated. This just made them more honest. She nodded. Sometimes the truth is a blessing, even when it's painful. We spent the next hour going through investment strategies and tax planning. When we finished, I had a clear picture of exactly how wealthy I'd become. On paper, I was worth just over $8 million. Not bad for someone who'd been written off as a failure by their own family. As Patricia was packing up her things, she said, "Can I ask you something personal?" "Sure. Are you happy?" The question caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you've achieved incredible financial success. You've built a business empire from nothing. You've proven everyone who doubted you wrong. But are you actually happy?" I thought about it for a moment. "I'm satisfied. I'm proud of what I've accomplished. I'm grateful for the opportunities I've had. But are you happy?" I don't know if happiness is the right word. I'm vindicated, I guess. For years, I was told I was worthless. Now I have proof that I'm not. That feels pretty good. Patricia nodded. Vindication is sweet, but don't let it become your only source of satisfaction. You've built something impressive here. Make sure you're enjoying it, not just using it to prove a point. After she left, I sat alone in the conference room thinking about her question. Was I happy? I had money, success, respect, and now I had revenge. But was I happy? My phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? It's Bethany." I almost hung up, but curiosity got the better of me. "How did you get this number?" "I called your office, told them I was a potential client." "Clever. I need to talk to you." "I thought that's what we were doing." "In person, please." I looked at my watch. It was almost 6 o'clock. "Why?" "Because there are things you don't understand. Things about what really happened." "I understand plenty." "No, you don't. Richard didn't just offer me opportunities to make extra money. He threatened me." I frowned. "Threatened you how? Can we meet, please? There's a coffee shop on 5th Street called Brew Haven. I'll be there at 7. "Bethany, 1 hour. That's all I'm asking." The line went dead. I sat there for a moment, debating whether to go. Part of me was curious about what she had to say. Another part of me suspected this was just another manipulation, another attempt to avoid consequences. But ultimately, my curiosity won. At 7 o'clock, I walked into Brew Haven and spotted Bethany immediately. She was sitting in the corner booth, hunched over a cup of coffee, looking nothing like the polished professional I was used to seeing. Her hair was unwashed, her clothes wrinkled, and she had dark circles under her eyes. She looked up when I approached, and I was startled by how much older she looked, like she'd aged 5 years in the past month. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly. I sat down across from her without ordering anything. "You have 1 hour. I know you think I'm just a spoiled brat who got caught stealing," she began. "And maybe that's partly true, but it's not the whole story. I'm listening." She took a shaky breath. "When I first started working at Richard's firm, everything was normal. Good even. I was learning a lot, getting good assignments, building experience. Okay? But after about 6 months, Richard started paying attention to me. Not in a mentoring way, in a personal way. I felt a chill run down my spine. At first, it was just compliments. Comments about my appearance, my intelligence. Then it was invitations to client dinners, work trips, conferences. And you went along with it. I was 24 years old and he was offering me opportunities that usually go to people with 10 years more experience. Of course I went along with it. She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup like she was trying to warm herself. The first time he kissed me, I was drunk at a client Christmas party. I pushed him away and told him it was inappropriate. He laughed it off and said I was right. But it didn't stop there. No, it got worse. He started calling me into his office for private meetings that weren't about work. He'd stand too close, touch my shoulder, make comments about my body. I felt my anger shifting from Bethany to Richard. When I complained to HR, they said they'd look into it. A week later, Richard told me that my performance review would be coming up soon and that he hoped we could work together like professionals. So he was threatening your job. Not directly, but the message was clear. Play along or find somewhere else to work. Bethany looked up at me with tears in her eyes. "Do you know how hard it is to find a job in finance with just 2 years of experience? Do you know what my student loan payments are every month?" I didn't answer, so I played along. I let him take me to expensive dinners. I let him buy me clothes, jewelry, gifts. I told myself it was just business networking. When did it become sexual? About a year in. He took me on a business trip to Chicago, booked us a suite with connecting rooms. After the client meeting, he came to my room with champagne. She stopped talking and stared into her coffee. "You don't have to tell me the details," I said quietly. The embezzlement started after that. He said I was part of his team now, his inner circle. He said the money was bonus compensation for my discretion and loyalty. "How much did you know about what you were doing?" At first, nothing. He had me move money between accounts, told me it was for tax purposes. Then gradually I realized we were hiding money from clients, skimming from settlements, inflating expenses. "Why didn't you quit?" Because by then he had evidence of my involvement. Photos from our trips together, recordings of our conversations, documentation of every financial transaction I'd helped with. He said if I ever tried to leave or expose him, he'd make sure I went to prison while he disappeared with millions. I leaned back in my chair, processing this information. "When did you realize he was planning to frame you?" 2 months ago. I found files on his computer that detailed how he was going to make it look like I was the mastermind and he was just an innocent victim. Everything was going to be pinned on me. "So you went to the FBI?" "Yes, but not because I wanted to. Because I realized I was trapped either way. At least cooperating gave me a chance at a reduced sentence." We sat in silence for several minutes. Why are you telling me this? I asked finally. Because I know you hate me. I know you think I'm a spoiled princess who got everything handed to her. And maybe that's true. But I also want you to understand that the last 3 years of my life have been a nightmare. I'm sorry that happened to you. Are you? I thought about it honestly. Yes. I wouldn't wish that kind of situation on anyone, but you're still not going to help me. I don't know what kind of help you're expecting. Money for a better lawyer, a place to stay while I figure things out. Maybe a job at your company once this is all over. I stared at her for a long moment. Bethany, do you remember my 21st birthday? She looked confused by the change of topic. Not really. I had a party at my apartment. It was small, just a few friends from work and school. You and Aunt Marlene came for about 20 minutes. Okay. While you were there, you asked me when I was going to get a real job. You said dog walking was fine for a summer gig, but that it was embarrassing for someone my age. I don't remember that. I do. And I remember thinking that someday I'd prove you wrong, that someday I'd be more successful than you could ever imagine. So this is about revenge. No, this is about consequences. You've spent our entire lives treating me like I was beneath you, not just ignoring me or being indifferent, but actively putting me down, making sure I knew that you thought I was worthless. That's not true. It is true. And now that you need something from me, you want to pretend we have a relationship we've never had. Bethany started crying. I know I wasn't always nice to you. I know Mom raised me to think I was better than everyone else, but I'm trying to change. This whole experience has taught me. Bethany, stop. I held up my hand. Just stop. You're not trying to change. You're trying to manipulate me into saving you from the consequences of your actions. That's not fair, isn't it? You spent 3 years participating in financial fraud. You took money that belonged to other people. You lied to clients, to auditors, to investigators. The only reason you're cooperating now is because you got caught. I was being blackmailed, and that's horrible. It really is. Richard Caldwell is a predator, and he should go to prison for a very long time. But that doesn't erase what you did. That doesn't make you a victim instead of a participant. I stood up to leave. Where are you going? Home. To my house. The one I paid for with money I earned, honestly. Please don't leave me like this. I looked down at her, crying into her coffee, and felt a strange mix of emotions. Pity, anger, sadness, and yes, even a little satisfaction. Bethany, I'm going to give you some advice. The same advice I wish someone had given me when I was struggling. What? Stop looking for someone to rescue you. Stop expecting other people to solve your problems. Stop thinking that you're entitled to help just because you're in trouble. But I don't have anyone else. Neither did I. When I was 22 and eating ramen noodles for dinner, I didn't have anyone to call for help. When my first business failed and I lost my apartment, I didn't have a safety net. When I was working 3 jobs just to pay rent, I didn't have family members offering me money or connections. I paused, remembering those difficult years. You know what I learned? I learned that I was stronger than I thought. I learned that I could survive things I never imagined I could survive. I learned that the only person I could really count on was myself. So you want me to suffer like you did? No, I want you to grow up like I did. I want you to take responsibility for your choices and build a life based on your own efforts, not on what other people give you. I pulled out my wallet and left $10 on the table for her coffee. The woman who raised me told me I'd never amount to anything. Tonight, I'm going home to a house worth more than she'll make in her lifetime. I'm not telling you this to hurt you. I'm telling you this because sometimes the people who doubt you do you the biggest favor of all. They force you to prove them wrong. So that's it? You're just going to walk away? That's exactly what I'm going to do. The same thing you walked away from me for 23 years. I headed toward the door, then stopped and turned back. But Bethany, when you get out of prison, when you've served your time and learned from your mistakes, when you've built a new life based on who you really are instead of who people told you should be, call me then. Maybe we can have a real conversation. I left her sitting there and drove home to my apartment, not the Victorian house. That wouldn't be ready for months. My current apartment, which was beautiful and expensive and entirely mine. As I pulled into my parking spot, my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Marlene called. She's very upset. She says you were cruel to Bethany. I typed back. I was honest with Bethany. Sometimes that feels cruel when you're used to being protected from the truth. She's going to prison. Yes, she is. Because she committed crimes. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive her? I stared at that message for a long time before responding. Forgiveness isn't the same thing as enabling. I can forgive her for how she treated me and still refuse to rescue her from the consequences of her actions. I don't understand how you became so cold. I became realistic. There's a difference. I turned off my phone and went upstairs. My apartment was quiet and peaceful, decorated with art I'd chosen and furniture I'd bought with money I'd earned. Every item in the space represented my own taste, my own choices, my own success. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my balcony, looking out at the city lights. Tomorrow, I'd check on the renovation progress at the Victorian house. Next week, I had meetings scheduled with potential investors who wanted to help me expand into new cities. Next month, I'd probably be featured in a business magazine article about successful entrepreneurs. But tonight, I was just satisfied. 3 months later, I was standing in the newly renovated Victorian house, putting the finishing touches on my new corporate headquarters. The first floor had been converted into beautiful office space with exposed brick walls, hardwood floors, and modern fixtures. The second floor remained residential, a perfect space for overnight guests or future live-in employees. The local business journal was doing a feature story about the renovation, and the photographer was setting up shots of my office. I'd furnished it with a massive oak desk, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, and artwork from local artists I'd commissioned. "This is incredible," the photographer said, adjusting his lighting. "You've really transformed this place. Thank you. It's been a labor of love. The reporter, a young woman named Jennifer Ross, was asking questions about my business expansion and future plans. As we talked, I noticed a car pulling up outside. Through the bay windows, I could see Aunt Marlene sitting in the passenger seat. Excuse me for just a moment, I told Jennifer. I walked outside to find Aunt Marlene and Uncle Frank getting out of their car. Aunt Marlene looked older, more fragile than she had 3 months earlier. Uncle Frank just looked uncomfortable. What are you doing here? I asked. We wanted to see the house, Aunt Marlene said quietly. To see what you've done with it. It's beautiful, Uncle Frank added. Really beautiful. I studied their faces, trying to determine their real motivation for being here. How did you know I was here today? Your mother mentioned the magazine article, Aunt Marlene said. I called and asked when the interview was scheduled. We stood there awkwardly for a moment. Would you like to come in? I asked finally. They nodded and followed me inside. Jennifer looked up curiously as we entered. This is my aunt and uncle, I explained. They're just stopping by for a quick tour. Of course, Jennifer said. Take your time. I showed them through the main floor offices, explaining how each room would be used. Aunt Marlene was quiet, but I could see her taking in every detail. The kitchen had been converted into a break room with high-end appliances and a conference table. The dining room was now a client meeting space with elegant furniture and a presentation screen. How many people work for you now? Uncle Frank asked. 62 employees across 6 cities, I said. We're hoping to hit 100 by the end of next year. That's impressive, Aunt Marlene said softly. We climbed the stairs to the second floor, which I'd kept as residential space. There were 2 bedrooms, a full bathroom, and a small living area. I thought you might use this as an apartment, Uncle Frank said. Maybe eventually. For now, it's guest space for out-of-town employees or investors. Aunt Marlene walked to the master bedroom window and looked out at the wraparound porch. I used to dream about having morning coffee on that porch, she said quietly. I know. She turned to face me. Bethany was sentenced yesterday. 18 months in federal prison. I nodded. I heard. She starts serving her time next month. I'm sorry. Are you? I thought about it honestly. I'm sorry that she made choices that led to this outcome. I'm sorry that she was manipulated and coerced. But I'm not sorry that she's facing consequences for her actions. Aunt Marlene's eyes filled with tears. She asked me to give you something. She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope with my name written on it in Bethany's handwriting. I don't want it, I said. Please. Just take it. You don't have to read it, but please take it. I accepted the envelope reluctantly. Can I ask you something? Aunt Marlene said. Sure. Do you feel better now? Now that you've proven you were right about everything? I looked around the beautiful house that I now owned, thought about the business empire I'd built, considered the success I'd achieved despite everyone's expectations. I don't know if better is the right word, I said honestly. I feel vindicated. I feel proud. I feel like I've finally proven to myself that I'm capable of more than anyone believed. But do you feel better? Some days? Uncle Frank cleared his throat. We should probably go. Let you get back to your interview. As they headed toward the stairs, Aunt Marlene stopped and turned back to me. I know I wasn't a good aunt to you, she said. I know I favored Bethany and made you feel less important. I don't have any excuse for that, except that I was trying to live through her success because I never had any of my own. I didn't know what to say to that. I'm proud of what you've accomplished, she continued. I should have said that years ago, but I'm saying it now. You've built something incredible here. Thank you, and I'm sorry for everything. After they left, I stood in the empty hallway for several minutes, holding Bethany's letter. Jennifer called up from downstairs that she was ready to continue the interview. I put the letter in my desk drawer without opening it and finished the photo shoot. The article would run next week with a headline about my transformation from failure to millionaire entrepreneur. It would probably generate more business and more investment opportunities. But as I locked up the house and drove home that evening, I found myself thinking about Aunt Marlene's question. Did I feel better? I had everything I thought I wanted: financial success, professional respect, and the satisfaction of proving everyone wrong. I'd bought the house that represented everything my aunt had wanted but couldn't achieve. I'd built a business empire while her perfect daughter went to prison. So why did I feel so empty? That night, I called my therapist. Dr. Sarah Chen was someone I'd started seeing 6 months earlier, when the success of my business had left me feeling surprisingly unfulfilled. I'm glad you called, she said when I explained what had happened with Aunt Marlene's visit. How are you feeling about the conversation? Confused, angry, sad? I don't know. Tell me about the anger. I'm angry that she apologized now, after all these years. I'm angry that it took Bethany going to prison for her to acknowledge how she treated me. I'm angry that she thinks saying sorry erases 23 years of emotional abuse. And the sadness? I'm sad that this is what it took. I'm sad that we couldn't have had a real relationship when it might have mattered. I'm sad that Bethany is going to prison, even though I'm the one who put her there. Do you regret turning her into the FBI? I thought about that question for a long time. No, she was committing crimes. She needed to be stopped. But I do regret that I did it partly for revenge instead of entirely for justice. Can you explain the difference? If I had done it purely for justice, I would have tried to help her through the legal process. I would have offered emotional support even while holding her accountable. Instead, I did it to prove a point and then walked away. And how does that feel? Hollow. Like I won the game but lost something important in the process. What did you lose? The possibility of a real family relationship. The chance to be the bigger person. Maybe the chance to help Bethany become a better person instead of just punishing her for being a worse one. After the therapy session, I went home and opened Bethany's letter. It was 3 pages long, handwritten in her careful script. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I needed to write this before I start my sentence. First, I want to say thank you. I know that sounds crazy, but I need you to understand something. Turning me into the FBI was probably the best thing anyone has ever done for me. Not because it saved me from Richard's scheme, although it did that too, but because it forced me to face the truth about who I had become. For my entire life, I lived in a bubble. Mom told me I was special, that I deserved the best, that the world owed me success because I was smart and pretty and well-educated. I never learned to struggle, to fail, to pick myself up, and try again. When things got difficult with Richard, instead of finding a way out, I took the easy path. I told myself I was a victim, that I had no choice, that I was protecting myself. But the truth is, I was protecting my lifestyle. I was protecting the image of perfection that Mom had built around me. You were right when you said I needed to grow up. I'm 31 years old and I've never really faced consequences for anything. When I got bad grades, Mom blamed the teachers. When I got fired from my first job, she said they didn't recognize my potential. When I had problems in my marriage, she said Dennis wasn't good enough for me. She never taught me that sometimes the problem is me. I've spent a lot of time in therapy over the past few months, and I've realized something important. The way our family treated you was wrong. Not just unfair, but actively harmful. We taught you that love was conditional, that you had to earn approval, that you weren't worth investing in, but we also gave you something I never got, the opportunity to become strong. I don't know who I am without other people telling me I'm special. I don't know how to solve problems without asking someone else to fix them. I don't know how to handle failure because I've never been allowed to fail. You do know those things. You learned them because you had to. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for help. I'm just asking you to know that I understand now why you couldn't save me from this. You knew that being saved wouldn't actually help me. I hope that when I get out of prison, I'll be the kind of person who could be your real cousin instead of just your relative, someone you could respect and trust and maybe even like. I hope that when I get out, I'll be strong enough to build a life based on who I really am instead of who people expected me to be. Thank you for refusing to enable me. Thank you for letting me face the consequences of my choices. Thank you for showing me that it's possible to succeed without anyone's help. And thank you for proving that the family failure can become the family success story. I love you, even though I never showed it. Bethany. I read the letter 3 times before putting it down. Then I picked up my phone and called Mom. Hi, honey, she said when she answered. How was the magazine interview? Good. Mom, I have a question for you. Okay. When Bethany gets out of prison, she's going to need help getting back on her feet, a place to stay, help finding a job, support while she rebuilds her life. Yes, I imagine so. I want you to tell Aunt Marlene that I'll provide that help. Really? With conditions. She has to complete a full rehabilitation program while she's in prison. She has to get therapy to address the issues that led to her crimes. She has to write a detailed plan for how she intends to rebuild her life based on her own efforts, not on other people's assistance. And if she does all that, then I'll give her a job at my company. Entry level, minimum wage, but with opportunities for advancement based on merit. I'll help her find an apartment. I'll provide the kind of support that helps someone build independence, not the kind that creates dependence. That's very generous. It's not generous. It's what family should do. We should hold each other accountable and help each other grow, not enable each other's worst impulses. What changed your mind? I realized that proving I was right wasn't as important as being the kind of person I wanted to be. 6 months later, I was sitting in my office at the Victorian House when Crystal knocked on the door. There's someone here to see you, she said. Says she's your cousin. I looked up from my computer, confused. Bethany's still in prison. No, this is someone different. Says her name is Lily. I stared at Crystal for a moment, then remembered. Lily was Aunt Marlene's younger daughter, Bethany's sister. She was about 5 years younger than Bethany, which would make her around 26 now. Send her in. Lily walked into my office looking nervous but determined. She was petite with dark hair and intelligent eyes, and she was carrying a portfolio case. Hi, she said, standing awkwardly by the door. I'm sorry to bother you at work, but I wasn't sure how else to reach you. Sit down, I said, gesturing to the chair across from my desk. What can I do for you? I heard about what you did for Bethany, about offering to help her when she gets out. News travels fast in this family. Mom's been talking about it nonstop. She says you're giving Bethany a second chance even though she doesn't deserve it. And what do you think? Lily was quiet for a moment. I think Bethany does deserve it. Everyone deserves a second chance. But I also think maybe I deserve a first chance. I'm not sure what you mean. She opened her portfolio and pulled out a thick folder. I graduated from college 3 years ago with a degree in business administration and a minor in graphic design. I've been working at a marketing firm downtown, but it's not really going anywhere. She handed me the folder. Inside were examples of her work. Logos, website designs, marketing campaigns, business plans. This is impressive, I said, flipping through the pages. Really impressive. Thank you. I've been following your company's growth, and I think you could benefit from having a dedicated marketing department. Right now, you're probably outsourcing most of your marketing and branding work. She was right. I was paying 3 different agencies to handle various aspects of marketing and advertising. I could do all of that in-house, she continued, more efficiently and more cost-effectively. And I could help you develop a comprehensive brand strategy for your expansion into new markets. I looked at her more carefully. Unlike Bethany, who had always seemed entitled and confident, Lily appeared nervous but prepared. She'd clearly done her homework. Why do you want to work for me specifically? I asked. Because you built something real from nothing. Because you value hard work over connections. Because you succeeded despite everyone telling you that you couldn't. And because I'm family? No, she said firmly. I don't want to work for you because we're related. I want to work for you because I think I can help your business grow, and I think you can help me become the kind of professional I want to be. I closed the portfolio and leaned back in my chair. Tell me about your current job. I'm a junior associate at Preston Marketing. I mostly do data entry and basic design work. I've been there for 3 years and I haven't gotten a promotion or a raise. My boss takes credit for my ideas and gives the interesting projects to his friends. Why haven't you looked for another job? I have, but without senior-level experience, it's hard to get interviews for the positions I really want. And the entry-level positions don't pay enough to cover my student loans. What about mom and dad? Can't they help with the loans? Lily laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. Dad's been out of work for 6 months. Mom's pension barely covers their own expenses. They're actually behind on their house payments. I was surprised. I didn't know that. They don't like to advertise it. They're hoping Dad will find something soon, but he's 58 and the job market isn't great for older workers. And Aunt Marlene can't help? Mom's too proud to ask for help. She's spent so many years acting like we were better than everyone else financially that she can't admit we're struggling now. I thought about this for several minutes while Lily waited patiently. If I hired you, I said finally, it would be based entirely on your qualifications and performance. I wouldn't give you special treatment because we're related, and I wouldn't keep you if you didn't earn your place. I understand. And I'd want you to be prepared for people to assume you got the job because of family connections, both inside and outside the company. I'm prepared for that. What kind of salary are you looking for? I'm currently making $32,000. I'd like to make at least 40, but I'm more interested in the opportunity to grow and take on real responsibility. I opened my laptop and pulled up our organizational chart. I've been thinking about creating a marketing director position, someone who would oversee all of our marketing and branding efforts, work directly with me on expansion strategies, and eventually manage a small team. Lily's eyes lit up. That sounds like exactly what I want to do. The starting salary would be $55,000, with performance reviews every 6 months and opportunities for advancement based on results. Are you serious? I'm always serious about business. When could you start? I'd need to give 2 weeks' notice at my current job. Perfect. That gives us time to set up your office and go through all of our current marketing contracts so you understand what we're working with. Lily looked like she was about to cry. I can't believe this is happening. Believe it. But remember, this is business. I'm hiring you because I think you can help my company succeed. If you prove me wrong, I'll fire you regardless of our family relationship. I won't prove you wrong. After Lily left, I sat in my office thinking about the conversation. Hiring her felt different from my interactions with Bethany. With Bethany, everything had been about the past. Old grievances, revenge, proving points. With Lily, everything was about the future. Opportunity, growth, potential. Maybe that was the difference between enabling someone and empowering them. That evening, I called Mom to tell her about hiring Lily. That's wonderful, she said. Lily's very talented. She just hasn't had the right opportunities. Speaking of opportunities, how are Uncle Frank's job prospects? Not great. He's been unemployed for almost 7 months now. At his age, companies assume he's outdated or too expensive. What kind of work does he do? Facilities management. He spent 20 years managing the maintenance and operations for a large office complex before they downsized. I thought about that for a moment. Would he be interested in managing the facilities for my company? We have 6 locations now, and I've been paying different contractors to handle maintenance, security, cleaning, and building management. Are you serious? I need someone to coordinate all of that, make sure our buildings are well-maintained and secure, handle vendor relationships. It would involve some travel between cities, but the pay would be good. I think he'd be very interested. Have him call me tomorrow. We can discuss the details. You don't have to do this just because we're family. I'm not. I'm doing it because I need someone reliable to handle facilities management, and Uncle Frank has the right experience. The fact that he's family is just a bonus. 2 months later, my company was running more smoothly than ever. Lily had reorganized our entire marketing strategy, saving us money on agency fees while significantly improving our brand consistency. Uncle Frank had streamlined our facilities management, reducing our maintenance costs by 20% while improving the quality of our buildings. More importantly, both of them were thriving in their roles. Lily had already earned her first performance-based raise and was working on a marketing campaign for our expansion into Denver. Uncle Frank had hired 2 assistants and was developing a comprehensive facilities management manual that we could use as we continued to grow. I was reviewing quarterly reports when Crystal buzzed me on the intercom. Your cousin Bethany called, she said. She's being released next week and wanted to know if your offer of help is still available. Tell her to call me directly. We need to discuss the conditions I mentioned. An hour later, Bethany called. I got your message about calling directly, she said. I wanted to thank you again for your willingness to help. Before we go any further, I need to know whether you've met the conditions I outlined. I completed the rehabilitation program and finished it with the highest marks in my class. I've been in therapy twice a week for the entire 18 months, and I've written a detailed plan for rebuilding my life. Tell me about the plan. I want to get a job in nonprofit financial management. I know I can't work in traditional finance anymore because of my record, but nonprofits need people who understand money management, and I think I could make a real contribution. That's a good idea. I've already been accepted into a certificate program for nonprofit management at the community college. It starts 6 weeks after my release. What about housing? I found a subsidized apartment about 10 minutes from your office. It's not fancy, but it's clean and safe and affordable. And you understand that the job I'm offering is entry-level customer service, not management? I understand. I need to prove myself before I can expect more responsibility. When do you get out? Next Tuesday. Come to my office Wednesday morning at 9. We'll discuss the job details and go over my expectations. Thank you. I know you don't owe me anything, and I appreciate this more than I can say. Don't thank me yet. Prove that you've actually changed, and then we'll see where things go. Wednesday morning, Bethany arrived at my office looking completely different from the last time I'd seen her. She was thinner, with shorter hair and no makeup. She wore simple clothes and carried herself with a humility I'd never seen from her before. Thank you for seeing me, she said, when Crystal showed her into my office. Sit down. Before we discuss the job, I want to hear about your experience in prison. It was the hardest thing I've ever been through, but also the most educational. How so? I learned what it's like to have no power, no privilege, no special treatment. I learned what it's like when your name and your family connections don't matter. I learned what it's like to earn respect through your actions instead of expecting it because of who you are. She paused, gathering her thoughts. I also learned that I'm capable of more than I ever imagined. I taught literacy classes to other inmates. I helped women prepare for their GED exams. I worked in the kitchen and learned that honest work is satisfying in a way that cutting corners never was. And the therapy? That was even harder than prison in some ways. Facing the truth about how I was raised, how I treated other people, how entitled and selfish I was. Understanding that I hurt people not because I was evil, but because I never learned to consider how my actions affected others. I nodded. The job I'm offering is customer service representative. You'd handle phone calls from clients, schedule appointments, process payments, and do basic administrative work. I understand. The pay is $15 an hour. After 6 months, if your performance is satisfactory, you'll be eligible for a raise. After a year, if you've proven yourself reliable and capable, we can discuss other opportunities within the company. That sounds fair. You'll report to Crystal, my office manager. She's been with the company for 3 years and she knows our systems better than anyone. You'll do exactly what she tells you to do, when she tells you to do it, with no arguments and no attitude. I understand. If you're late more than twice in your first 90 days, you're fired. If you lie to me about anything, you're fired. If you treat any employee, client, or vendor with disrespect, you're fired. If you steal so much as a paperclip, you're fired. I understand. And if you ever try to use our family relationship to get special treatment or avoid consequences, you're fired immediately. I wouldn't do that. Good, because I've worked too hard building this company to let anyone damage it, even family. I handed her a packet of paperwork. Employment application, tax forms, employee handbook. Read everything carefully and bring it back tomorrow morning filled out completely. Thank you, she said, standing to leave. I won't let you down. Don't make promises you might not be able to keep. Just show up every day and do your best work. 6 months later, Bethany had earned her first raise and a commendation from Crystal for excellent customer service. She'd completed her nonprofit management certificate and was volunteering on weekends with a local financial literacy organization. More importantly, she'd started attending family gatherings again, not as the golden child, but as an equal member of the family. She asked questions about other people's lives instead of just talking about herself. She offered to help with dishes and cleanup instead of expecting to be waited on. At Christmas dinner, I watched her playing board games with Lily's kids, laughing and joking without any trace of the arrogance that had defined her for so many years. She's different, Mom said, sitting down beside me on the couch. She's who she always could have been if we'd let her fail earlier. I said, do you regret the way things happened? I thought about that question. I regret that it took so long. I regret that she had to go through something so traumatic to learn these lessons, but I don't regret holding her accountable. And how are things with Marlene? I looked across the room where Aunt Marlene was helping Bethany set up a puzzle. They looked relaxed together in a way I'd never seen before. Better, she still has a ways to go in terms of understanding how her parenting affected both of her daughters, but she's trying. She's in therapy too, working on her own issues. And what about you? Are you happy now? I smiled. I'm getting there. Building the business gave me financial security and professional satisfaction, but building actual relationships with family members is giving me something I didn't know I was missing. What's that? A sense of belonging. Not the kind where you have to prove yourself constantly, but the kind where you're valued for who you are. As I was getting ready to leave that evening, Bethany approached me in the hallway. Can I ask you something? She said. Sure. Why did you give me a second chance? After everything that happened, everything I did, why did you decide to help me? I thought about her question carefully, because I realized that helping you become a better person was more important than punishing you for being a worse one. But you had every right to be angry. You had every right to walk away. I did, and I was angry. But staying angry wasn't making me happy, and it wasn't making you better. Sometimes the most radical thing you can do is choose growth over revenge. Thank you, she said quietly, for seeing potential in me that I couldn't see in myself. Thank you for proving that people can change when they really want to. As I drove home that night, I thought about how different my life looked compared to a year ago. I still had the same financial success, the same professional achievements, the same beautiful house and thriving business. But now I also had something I'd never had before, a family that actually felt like family. Not perfect relationships. We all still had work to do, but real relationships based on mutual respect, honest communication, and genuine care for each other's well-being. It turned out that proving I was better than everyone else was nowhere near as satisfying as helping everyone else become better versions of themselves. And for the first time in my adult life, when someone asked if I was happy, I could honestly say yes. I overheard my boyfriend telling his mom, I just don't have enough to buy the ring she's worth, so I decided to tell him how much I am actually worth. We'd been dating for 3 years. Tristan was sweet, thoughtful, and came from old money that his family guarded like dragons hoarding gold. I came from nothing. Scholarships put me through college, side hustles paid my rent. I'd learned early that wanting things and affording things were two different universes. That night, I wasn't supposed to be home. My shift at the hospital got canceled last minute, so I walked in quietly through the back door. That's when I heard him on the phone in the bedroom, his voice strained in that way it gets when he's talking to his mother. I want to marry her, I really do. But the ring Dad gave you cost $40,000. Grandfather's was $60,000. I just don't have enough to buy the ring she's worth. My stomach dropped. Not because of the money, but because he was measuring my value in carats. His mother's voice crackled through the speaker. Well, if you can't afford a proper ring, maybe you should reconsider. A woman expects certain standards. I backed out quietly and drove around for an hour, letting my anger crystallize into clarity. When I came home, I acted normal. We ordered takeout, watched a movie, but I'd made my decision. The next morning, I called my boss and took a personal day. Then I scheduled a meeting with Tristan's father at his office downtown. Bernard was shocked when his assistant showed me in. Is everything all right with Tristan? He asked, concerned. Everything's fine, I said, sitting across from him. I'm here about the trust fund. His eyebrows shot up. I'm sorry? The trust fund my grandmother left me. The one I've never touched. I need to access it now. You see, what Tristan didn't know, what his whole family didn't know, is that my grandmother wasn't just anybody. She was Evelyn Chen, tech pioneer who sold her company in 1987 for $340 million. She lived modestly, invested wisely, and when she died, she left everything to her only grandchild, me. The lawyers had strict instructions. I couldn't access the money until I was 28 or until I got married, whichever came first. And I could never tell anyone about it unless absolutely necessary. Grandma wanted me to know my own worth before I knew my net worth. I was 3 months from my 28th birthday. Bernard made a call. Within an hour, my account manager, Patricia, arrived with documents. My current balance sat at $127 million, not including the property assets and stock portfolios. I'd like to make a withdrawal, I said calmly. And I need your discretion, Bernard. Tristan can't know about this yet. That evening, Tristan came home to find me cooking dinner like always. On the counter sat a small blue box. What's this? He asked, his voice uncertain. Open it. Inside was a platinum ring with a flawless 3-carat diamond, flanked by sapphires. It was stunning. It cost $85,000. I don't understand, he stammered. You said you couldn't afford the ring I'm worth, I said quietly. So I bought it myself. This is how much I'm worth, Tristan. The question is, are you worth keeping? His face went white, then red. You've been hiding money from me? I wasn't hiding anything. You never asked. You just assumed I was poor and needed saving. How much? He demanded. I smiled. Enough that your mother's opinion about proper standards doesn't matter anymore. The next morning, I woke up to find Tristan gone. His mother had called 47 times. When I finally answered, her voice was ice. You manipulative little... Careful, I interrupted. I'm recording this. She hung up. 3 days later, Tristan showed up at my apartment with his father. But Bernard wasn't there to help his son. He was there to make me an offer. May we come in? Bernard asked, his voice careful. I stepped aside. Tristan wouldn't meet my eyes. He looked like he hadn't slept. His designer shirt wrinkled for the first time since I'd known him. Bernard sat on my secondhand couch and pulled out a folder. I'm here in my capacity as your grandmother's executor and trustee. I know who you are, I said. What you may not know is that Evelyn left specific instructions regarding your inheritance. Instructions I was bound to follow. He opened the folder. She wanted you to experience life without wealth, to build your own identity, to find someone who loved you for who you were, not what you had. Tristan finally looked up. You knew? The whole time? I've known since the day you introduced her, Bernard said quietly. Your grandmother and I were close friends for 40 years. When she showed me her granddaughter's photo, I recognized the young woman my son was dating. My hands went cold. You've been watching me? Not watching. Waiting. Evelyn's will had a provision. If you fell in love and that person proposed without knowledge of your wealth, the trust would release immediately. But if anyone told you about the money, or if anyone in my family revealed your identity, the entire estate would go to charity. The room spun. So you let Tristan think I was poor? I let him know you for who you are, Bernard corrected. And when I heard him on that phone call with his mother, when I heard him say he couldn't afford the ring you deserved, I knew exactly what kind of man my son had become. His voice broke slightly. I'm ashamed to say I didn't raise him better than that. Tristan stood up suddenly. I don't need to listen to this. Sit down, Bernard ordered. For the first time, I heard the steel that had built a financial empire. You will hear what you've cost yourself. Tristan sat. Bernard turned back to me. Your grandmother wanted you to make the choice freely. She wanted you to know if someone loved you or loved your potential wealth. That's why I couldn't intervene when my wife said those horrible things about standards and proper rings. Your wife knew? I asked. No, no one knew except me and Patricia. And now, because you've accessed the trust, the provisions are complete. You're free to tell anyone you want. I looked at Tristan, really looked at him. The man I'd spent 3 years with suddenly seemed like a stranger. Did you love me? I asked him directly. He opened his mouth, closed it. I thought I did. But not enough to marry me with a simple ring from a pawn shop? That's not fair, he protested. You don't understand the pressure. My mother, my family, they have expectations. I understand perfectly, I interrupted. You chose their expectations over me. Bernard pulled out another document. There's one more thing. Evelyn left you a letter to be delivered when you access the trust. He handed me an envelope with my grandmother's handwriting. I opened it with shaking hands. My dearest granddaughter, if you're reading this, you've made it to 28 or fallen in love. Either way, I'm proud of you. I hope you've learned that your worth has nothing to do with bank accounts or family names. You're brilliant, hardworking, and kind. That's your inheritance from me that matters most. The money is just a tool. Don't let it change who you are. Don't let it make you cruel or cold. And whatever you do, don't waste it on someone who only wants you after they know you have it. Live boldly. Love fiercely. And if anyone ever makes you feel small, remember, you come from women who built empires. All my love, Grandma. I wiped my eyes. When I looked up, Bernard was smiling sadly. She was an extraordinary woman, he said. and she raised an extraordinary granddaughter. Tristan reached for my hand. We can start over. Now that I know, I pulled away. Now that you know what? We can have a real future. The kind my family expects. The kind we both deserve. I deserve someone who wanted me when I wore scrubs and ate ramen for dinner, I said quietly. You're not that person. You're being unreasonable. His mother's voice came from my doorway. I hadn't even heard her come in. My son loves you. This is just a misunderstanding. I stood up. Mrs. Whitmore, I don't recall inviting you. I have every right to protect my son from gold diggers. Bernard winced. Victoria, please don't make this worse. Worse? She advanced into my apartment, her heels clicking on the worn hardwood. This girl trapped our son. She hid her wealth to make him look bad, to manipulate him into— Enough, I said. My voice came out steady and cold. I'm going to say this once. I never hid anything. I lived my life. Your son met me at a coffee shop where I was working the register between classes. He pursued me. He told me he loved how real I was, how refreshing it was to meet someone who wasn't after his family's money. Exactly, Victoria said. Because you already had money. I had nothing, I corrected. I had student loans and a shared apartment with 3 roommates. I worked 40 hours a week and still couldn't afford new shoes. That was my reality. The money in a trust fund I couldn't touch might as well have been on the moon. But you knew it was there, she insisted. And you know you have a retirement account. Does that mean you're wealthy today? Or does it mean you have something waiting for the future? She opened her mouth, closed it. I turned to Tristan. I loved you, past tense. I loved the man who brought me soup when I was sick and couldn't afford a doctor, who studied with me at the library because I couldn't afford coffee shops, who told me that being with me was worth more than all the money in the world. I held up the ring box he'd never actually offered me. But that man died the second he told his mother I wasn't worth a proper ring. I never said that, Tristan protested. You said you didn't have enough to buy the ring I was worth. As if my worth could be measured in dollars. As if the problem was the ring and not the fact that you valued your family's opinion more than your love for me. Bernard stood. Victoria, Tristan, it's time to go. We're not finished here, Victoria declared. Yes, you are, I said firmly. And I want you all to understand something clearly. I'm not vindictive. I'm not going to use my money to hurt your family or ruin your business. But I'm also not going to let you treat me like a problem that needs to be managed. I pulled out my phone and played the recording I'd made of Tristan's phone call with his mother. Well, if you can't afford a proper ring, maybe you should reconsider. A woman expects certain standards. Victoria's face went white. I have 3 years of messages, calls, and comments. I continued. Every time you suggested I wasn't good enough. Every time you mentioned how Tristan should find someone from a proper family. Every family dinner where you sat me at the children's table even though I was 27 years old. That's legal, I finished. And I'm not threatening you with it. I'm just making sure you understand that I see you clearly now. All of you. Bernard herded his wife and son toward the door. Before leaving, he turned back. For what it's worth, Evelyn would have liked you even more after this conversation. She never suffered fools, and she never let anyone diminish her. After they left, I sat alone in my apartment. The one bedroom with the leaky faucet and the neighbor who played drums at 2 a.m. I could afford to move tomorrow. Buy a penthouse. Never work another shift. But Grandma's letter echoed in my mind. Don't let it change who you are. I called Patricia. I need to set up some things, I told her. Scholarships for nursing students. A fund for families who can't afford medical care. An investment in affordable housing. Of course, she said. How much are we allocating? Half, I said. Half of everything. I want to live comfortably, but I want to remember where I came from. Your grandmother would approve, Patricia said softly. She did something similar. I know, I replied. That's why I'm still living in this apartment, at least for now. That night, I put the $85,000 ring in a safety deposit box. Not because I wanted to keep it, but because someday I wanted to show it to my daughter or niece and tell her this story. Tell her that knowing your worth means never letting anyone make you feel worthless, no matter how many zeros are in your bank account. 2 weeks later, I got a text from Bernard. Tristan has been cut off. He needs to learn the value of earning his own way. If you're amenable, I'd like to take you to lunch. Not as his father, but as your grandmother's old friend. I have stories about her I think you'd like to hear. I agreed. We met at a diner, not one of his usual 5-star restaurants. He ordered coffee and pie. Evelyn and I met in 1978, he began. She'd just started her company. I was a junior analyst at an investment firm. She came in to pitch her technology, and every partner in the room dismissed her, told her to get her husband to present it instead. What did she do? She walked out, went to our competitor, and made them billionaires. He laughed. I quit the next day and begged her to let me manage her money. She said yes, but only if I promised to never mistake quiet for weak. She sounds incredible. She was terrifying and wonderful. She once fired an entire board of directors because they suggested she retire and let the men run things. This was 1985. She replaced them all with women and minorities, and the company's value doubled in 2 years. I smiled, imagining it. When she got sick, Bernard continued, she made me promise something. She said, my granddaughter is going to inherit a fortune, but I want her to inherit something more important first. I want her to inherit herself. That's why the restrictions on the trust. Exactly. She was afraid you'd be swallowed up by wealth before you knew who you were. She wanted you to struggle a little, to build your own identity, to know your own strength. Did she think I'd marry someone like Tristan? Bernard sighed. She hoped you wouldn't, but she knew it was possible. That's why she set up the test. If Tristan had proposed knowing you were poor, had committed to you without knowing about the money, she would have approved the marriage and released the funds immediately. She believed someone who loved you at your perceived worst would cherish you at your best. But Tristan couldn't do it. My son, Bernard said slowly, has been given everything his entire life. He doesn't know how to value things he has to work for. I enabled that. His mother enabled that. And now he's learning a very expensive lesson. You really cut him off? Completely. He has his salary from the company, nothing more. No trust fund, no credit cards, no safety net. He's living in a studio apartment and taking the subway to work. How's he handling it? Bernard's expression was pain. Not well. But sometimes the kindest thing a parent can do is let their child struggle. I should have done it years ago. We talked for 3 hours. He told me about Grandma's adventures, her failed relationships before Grandpa, her fears about leaving me money. He showed me pictures I'd never seen. Her at 25, fierce and determined. Her at 60, softer but still commanding. She wanted you to know something else, Bernard said as we were leaving. The money is yours to do with as you please. But she hoped you'd use it to build something, like she did. Not just for yourself, but for others who need a chance. I'm already working on it, I said. Scholarships, medical funds, housing investments. His eyes welled up. She knew you would. 3 months later, I was at the hospital when a patient came in with a young daughter. The woman had insurance, but not enough to cover the specialist her daughter needed. I overheard the social worker explaining their limited options. I followed the social worker to her office. The family in room 412, I said. What would full coverage cost? She looked surprised. Are you family? No, I'm someone who can help. I wrote a check. Then I wrote another for the family in 408 whose son needed surgery, and another for the elderly man in 315 who couldn't afford his medications. By the end of my shift, I'd given away $200,000. It felt better than any shopping spree could have. That night, my former roommate Riley called. Girl, did you win the lottery? She shrieked. Someone just paid off all our student loans. I smiled. Anonymous donor, I heard. This is insane. Do you know what this means? I can actually save for a house. I can take that job I wanted that pays less but makes me happy. She started crying. I can breathe. You deserve it, I said. You worked so hard for that degree. We all did. But seriously, if you find out who did this, I need to thank them. I never told her it was me. That wasn't why I did it. 6 months after the breakup, I ran into Tristan at a coffee shop. He looked different, tired. His expensive watch was gone. His clothes were off the rack. Hey, he said awkwardly. Hey, can we talk? We sat down. He had regular coffee, not his usual complicated order. I've been thinking a lot, he began, about what you said, about how I measured your worth in dollars. I waited. You were right. I was raised to think value came from price tags and family names. I thought love was supposed to look a certain way, cost a certain amount. I never learned to value things I couldn't quantify. What changed? Dad cut me off. I'm living on $3,000 to $800 a month. Do you know how hard that is? I almost laughed. Yes, Tristan, I do. That's more than I lived on for years. He had the decency to look embarrassed. Right. Of course. I'm sorry. I'm learning things I should have known years ago, like how to budget, how to cook, how to take the subway without looking terrified. Those are good skills. I'm also learning that I took you for granted. You worked so hard and I never appreciated it. I thought I was being noble by not caring that you didn't have money, but really I was being condescending, like I was doing you a favor by being with you. Yeah, I said quietly. You were. I know it's too late, he continued. I know I burned that bridge, but I wanted you to know that losing you taught me more than my father cutting me off. Money I can earn back. But you were irreplaceable, and I didn't see it until you were gone. Thank you for saying that. Are you seeing anyone? No, I admitted. I've been busy. Busy how? I smiled. Living boldly. Loving fiercely. Making my grandmother proud. He nodded slowly. She sounds like she was an amazing woman. She was. She left me more than money. She left me a roadmap for how to be strong. We talked for a while longer. It was almost friendly. When we parted, he hugged me. I hope you find someone worthy of you, he said. I hope you find yourself, I replied. A year passed. I'd thrown myself into my work, both at the hospital and with my foundation. We'd funded 200 scholarships, covered medical expenses for 89 families, and built affordable housing units for 150 people. I still lived in my apartment, still drove my old car, still worked my shifts, but I also traveled. I'd always wanted to see Thailand, so I went. Then Morocco, then Iceland. Not staying in luxury hotels, but in hostels and local guest houses, meeting people who reminded me why Grandma wanted me to know myself first. In Reykjavik, I met Henrik. He was a teacher from Norway, traveling on summer break. We bonded over cheap wine and shared stories about our worst students. What do you do? He asked on our third night. I'm a nurse, I said, and I run a foundation that helps families with medical and educational expenses. That's beautiful work. What about you? I teach literature to teenagers who would rather be anywhere else. Some days I'm convinced I'm wasting my life. Other days, a student tells me a book I recommended changed their perspective, and I remember why I do it. We spent 2 weeks together. When it was time to go home, he kissed me goodbye at the airport. If you're ever in Norway, he said. If you're ever in New York, I replied. 3 months later, he showed up at my apartment with a backpack and a nervous smile. I took a sabbatical, he said. Thought I'd spend it in New York, if that's okay. It was more than okay. Henrik didn't know about my money. He knew I worked at a hospital and ran a small foundation. When I told him I needed to work weekends, he never complained. When I said I couldn't afford expensive restaurants, he cooked for us instead. One night, 6 months into our relationship, my accountant called with an urgent matter. I took it in the bedroom, but Henrik heard me mention dollar amounts that didn't match a nurse's salary. When I came out, he was quiet. I need to tell you something, I said. He waited. I told him everything. About Grandma, the trust fund, Tristan, all of it. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Why didn't you tell me before? He finally asked. Because I needed to know you loved me, not my bank account. I fell in love with a nurse who works double shifts and still finds time to help strangers. That's who you are. The money is just, he waved his hand, details. Important details. Not to me. I don't need a wealthy girlfriend. I need you. He smiled. Though I'm curious why you're still in this apartment with a leaky sink. Because my grandmother taught me not to let money change who I am. Smart woman, he said. But even smart women deserve working plumbing. We moved in together shortly after. Not to a penthouse, but to a nice 2-bedroom in a neighborhood we both loved. Henrik met Bernard, who immediately approved. He looks at you the way your grandfather looked at Evelyn, Bernard said after dinner. Like you're the most fascinating person in the world. 18 months after our first meeting in Iceland, Henrik proposed. The ring was simple silver with a small sapphire. It's not much, he said nervously. Teacher salary doesn't leave room for... It's perfect, I interrupted. It's exactly what I'm worth. He looked confused. I pulled out the box with the $85,000 ring I'd bought myself years ago. This is what I thought I needed to prove my value. But this, I held up his simple ring. This is given with love. That's what makes it priceless. We got married in a small ceremony. Bernard walked me down the aisle. Riley was my maid of honor. Henrik's family flew in from Norway. Tristan sent a card. Inside was a simple note. Congratulations. I'm happy you found what I couldn't give you. There was no signature, but I recognized his handwriting. Bernard pulled me aside during the reception. Your grandmother would have loved this day. Simple, authentic, full of real joy. I wish she could be here. She is, he said, pointing to my heart. Every choice you've made, every person you've helped, every time you've stayed true to yourself, that's her living through you. After the wedding, Henrik and I took over management of the foundation together. He brought his teaching expertise, helping us develop educational programs. I brought my medical background for the healthcare initiatives. We still worked our regular jobs. I remained a nurse, taking shifts when I could. Henrik taught at a public school in the Bronx. The money sat mostly untouched except for foundation work and modest, comfortable living. 3 years into our marriage, I got pregnant. When our daughter was born, we named her Evelyn. The day we brought her home, I found a letter in our mailbox. It was from Bernard. Your grandmother left one final instruction to be delivered when you had a child. She said timing was everything. Inside was a small key and a note in Grandma's handwriting. My dearest granddaughter, if you're reading this, you've built a life. You've loved and been loved. You've created something beyond wealth. You've created meaning. This key opens a safety deposit box at First National. Inside, you'll find letters I wrote to your daughter, one for each year until she turns 28. Give them to her when you think she's ready. Teach her what I taught you. Worth is not measured in dollars. Strength is not given, it's built. And the greatest inheritance we can leave is the courage to be fully ourselves. Love her fiercely. Live boldly. And never, ever let anyone tell you what you're worth. All my love across time, Grandma. I held baby Evelyn close, tears streaming down my face. Henrik read the letter over my shoulder. She really thought of everything. She wanted to make sure the lessons continued. They will, he promised. We'll make sure of it. 5 years later, little Evelyn was starting kindergarten. We lived in a modest house in Queens, chosen for its good school district and diverse neighborhood. Henrik had been promoted to principal. I'd become head of emergency nursing at my hospital. The foundation had grown beyond anything I'd imagined. We'd helped thousands of families, funded hundreds of scholarships, built affordable housing in 3 states. One morning, I was dropping Evelyn off at school when I saw a familiar face in the pickup line. Tristan. He was older, lines around his eyes, but he looked peaceful. Next to him was a woman I didn't recognize and a little boy about Evelyn's age. Our eyes met. He gave a small wave. I waved back. After drop-off, he approached me in the parking lot. This is weird, he said, laughing nervously. Yeah, that's your daughter? She's beautiful. Thank you. That's your son? Yeah, Oliver. He's my whole world. What brings you to this neighborhood? I thought you'd move to Manhattan. I did for a while. But Dad kept me cut off for 5 years. By the time he felt I'd learned my lesson, I'd gotten used to living simply. Turns out I like it better. This neighborhood felt like home. And the woman? My wife, Natasha. She's a high school teacher. We met at a parent-teacher conference for my nephew. She had no idea who my family was. Didn't care when she found out. Sounds familiar, I said, smiling. Yeah, well, you taught me what to look for. We stood there awkwardly for a moment. I'm glad you're happy, he said finally. I mean that. I'm glad you found your way too. Dad talks about you sometimes, about the foundation, the work you're doing. He's really proud of you, says you're exactly what your grandmother hoped you'd be. That means a lot. I wanted to say, he paused, choosing words carefully. Thank you for not destroying my family when you could have, for just walking away and building something better. I didn't do it for you, I said honestly. I did it for me. Revenge would have been living in your mother's head rent-free forever. I chose to live in my own freedom instead, he nodded. That's exactly what Natasha would say. You two would probably get along. Maybe, I said. This neighborhood has a tendency to bring people together. Over the next year, our families became friendly. Not close, but friendly. The kids played together at the park. We'd wave at school events. Natasha and I discovered we both loved terrible reality TV and bonded over wine and discussions about The Bachelor. One evening, the four of us were having dinner, something that would have been unimaginable years ago. Can I ask you something? Natasha said suddenly. And please don't think I'm rude. Go ahead. Tristan told me what happened with you two. The money, the ring, all of it. But he also said you could have made his life hell and you didn't. Why? I thought about it. Because holding on to anger would have meant he still had power over me. Letting go meant I got to decide who I wanted to be. That's incredibly mature. Trust me, I had some very immature moments first. I may have sent his mother a fruit basket with a note saying, "Thanks for raising a son who taught me what I deserve," before blocking her number. Tristan choked on his wine. You didn't. I absolutely did. The note was in calligraphy. It cost $200. Natasha burst out laughing. Oh my God, I love it. What did she do? Tried to call 93 times before realizing I'd blocked her. Bernard told me she ranted about it for weeks. She still brings it up sometimes, Tristan admitted, usually when she's had too much champagne at family events. Good, I said cheerfully. Every time she eats a pear, I want her to think about the daughter-in-law who got away. We all laughed. It felt good, healing even. Henrik squeezed my hand under the table. My wife, the fruit basket assassin. It was a very expensive fruit basket, I defended. Imported cheeses, fancy crackers, those weird tiny jams. I wanted to make sure the message was classy. The message was "fuck you" wrapped in cellophane, Tristan said. The classiest fuck you she'll ever receive, I agreed. Later, as Henrik and I walked home, he asked, do you ever regret how it all happened? The pain with Tristan? The revelation about the money? No, I said, because if it had happened differently, I wouldn't be who I am now. I wouldn't have learned what I learned, and I probably wouldn't have met you. The universe works in mysterious ways. My grandmother would say the universe rewards those who know their worth. Smart woman, the smartest. When little Evelyn turned 7, I gave her the first letter from my grandmother. She read it slowly, her little brow furrowed in concentration. Grandma Evelyn says I'm going to do great things, she announced. You are, I agreed. She says I should be brave and never let anyone make me small. Good advice. Did you follow her advice, Mommy? I thought about the scared girl who'd overheard a conversation about rings and worth. About the woman who'd bought her own ring to prove a point. About the choices I'd made since. I tried my best, I said. Sometimes I succeeded. Sometimes I failed. But I kept trying. Grandma Evelyn says that's what matters. The trying. She's right about that too. Evelyn carefully folded the letter and put it in her treasure box with her other important things. A smooth rock from the beach. A feather she'd found in the park. A photo of all of us on vacation. Will I get more letters? She asked. One every year until you're 28. That's so long from now. It'll go faster than you think. That night, I pulled out my own letter from Grandma. The one that had started everything. I read it again, like I did every year on the anniversary of accessing the trust. Live boldly, love fiercely. And if anyone ever makes you feel small, remember, you come from women who built empires. I'd built my empire, not of buildings or stock portfolios, though those existed, but of choices and values and relationships built on honesty. An empire of helping hands and second chances. An empire where worth was measured in impact, not income. The foundation had grown to a $400 million operation. We'd helped tens of thousands of families, created opportunities for people who'd been told they weren't worth investing in. Every scholarship recipient got a letter from me. Someone believed in me when I needed it most. Now I'm passing that belief forward to you. Use this opportunity wisely, not because you owe me, but because you owe yourself the chance to become everything you can be. I'd gotten thousands of letters back over the years. Thank you notes from students who'd graduated, from families who'd gotten through medical crises, from people who'd moved into our affordable housing and rebuilt their lives. Those letters filled an entire room in our house. My real treasure. Bernard was aging now, in his late 70s. He'd stepped down from running the company, passing it to a board of directors he'd carefully selected. We still had lunch once a month. Your grandmother would be so proud, he said at our latest meeting. Not just of the money you've given away, but of who you've become. I hope so. I know so. She told me once that the true test of character is what you do when no one is watching, and nothing is at stake except your own integrity. I think about that a lot. She also said something else. She said, I'm giving my granddaughter money, but what I really want to give her is the wisdom to know it doesn't matter. That's a hard lesson. The best ones are. He pulled out a small box. I have something for you. From Evelyn. She left it with instructions to give it to you on your 35th birthday. I opened it. Inside was a simple gold locket. When I opened it, there was a picture of Grandma on one side and a picture of me as a baby on the other. She wore this every day, Bernard said. She wanted you to have it when you were old enough to understand what it meant to carry someone with you. I put it on. It felt right against my skin, like coming home. There's something else, Bernard continued. A last message she wanted me to tell you in person. He paused, collecting himself. She said, tell my granddaughter that knowing your worth doesn't mean shouting it from rooftops. It means walking through the world with quiet confidence, helping others find their own worth along the way. That's the real inheritance. That's what builds empires that last. I wiped tears from my eyes. Thank you for carrying all these messages for so long. It was my honor. Your grandmother was the love of my life, though I never told her. I was married to someone else, built a different life, but she was the one who taught me what real worth looked like. When she asked me to watch over you, to help you find your way, it was the greatest gift she could have given me. She loved you too, I said. I can tell from the way she trusted you with all of this. He smiled sadly. Some loves aren't meant to be lived, they're meant to be honored. I honored her by helping you become who you were meant to be. We sat in comfortable silence for a while. What will you do now? He asked eventually. You've accomplished so much. What's next? I want to expand the foundation internationally. There are kids in developing countries who need the same chances I had. I want to build schools, fund medical clinics, create opportunities. Ambitious. Grandma would expect nothing less. No, she wouldn't. 2 years later, we opened our first international initiative in Ghana, a school and medical clinic combined, serving 500 children and their families. At the opening ceremony, I stood before a crowd of villagers, local officials, and foundation staff. My grandmother believed that every person has inherent worth, I said, not because of what they own or where they come from, but because they're human. She taught me that those of us with resources have a responsibility to help others access their potential. The children sang a song they'd learned for the occasion, their voices carried across the red dirt, clear and hopeful. After the ceremony, a little girl approached me shyly. She couldn't have been more than 6. Are you the rich lady? She asked in accented English. I knelt down to her level. I'm just a lady who wants to help. My teacher says you're going to pay for my school forever. That's the plan. Why? It was such a simple question, such a profound one. Because someone helped me once, I said. And now it's my turn to help you. Will I have to help someone when I'm big? Only if you want to, but I think you will. Because once you know how good it feels to help someone, it's hard to stop. She smiled and ran off to join her friends. Henrik came up beside me, slipping his hand into mine. 20 schools, he said. That's the goal now, isn't it? 25, I corrected. I'm feeling ambitious. Your grandmother created a monster. The best kind. That night, in our hotel in Accra, I opened my laptop and started writing. Not a business plan or a foundation proposal. A letter. Dear Evelyn, by the time you read this, you'll be 28. The same age I was when I first accessed your great-grandmother's trust fund. I wonder what kind of woman you'll be. What dreams you'll have. What struggles you'll have faced. I'm writing to tell you the same thing great-grandma Evelyn told me. Know your worth. But let me add something she learned too late to tell me directly. Knowing your worth also means helping others discover theirs. The money I'm leaving you comes with no restrictions. You can access it whenever you need it. But I hope by the time you do, you'll already know what great-grandma wanted me to know. The money is just a tool. Who you are matters more than what you have. I've lived a beautiful life. I've loved deeply, worked hard, and helped where I could. I've made mistakes and learned from them. I've lost people and found new ones. And through it all, I've tried to honor the woman who gave me more than money. She gave me a blueprint for living. Whatever you do with your inheritance, do it with intention. Do it with love. Do it with the knowledge that you come from a line of strong women who built empires, not of wealth, but of worth. Live boldly, love fiercely, and never let anyone tell you what you're worth. All my love, your mother. I saved it in a file marked, for Evelyn, age 28. Someday she'd read it. Someday she'd make her own choices about what to do with the fortune she'd inherit. But for now, she was just a kid who loved horses and hated broccoli, who climbed trees and scraped her knees, who had her father's kind eyes and her great-grandmother's determination, perfect just as she was. 10 years passed. The foundation flourished. We'd built 31 schools across 8 countries, funded medical care for over 100,000 families, provided scholarships to 2,400 students. Little Evelyn was 17 now, applying to colleges. She wanted to study international development. I want to work with your foundation, she announced one night at dinner. After college, I want to help build schools like the ones in Ghana and Tanzania. What about the trust fund? I asked carefully. You'll get access in 11 years. She shrugged. That's just money. I want to earn my place. I want to know I'm doing this work because I chose it, not because I have to. Henrik and I exchanged glances. She'd absorbed the lessons without us having to preach them. Great-grandma Evelyn would like that answer, I said. I hope so. From her letters, she sounds like she'd be really tough to impress. She was, and you would have impressed her. Bernard passed away the following spring. He was 82 and he went peacefully in his sleep. At his funeral, I learned things I'd never known. How he'd secretly funded scholarships for underprivileged students for 40 years. How he'd paid medical bills for families in need. How he'd used his wealth quietly, without fanfare or recognition. He learned from Evelyn, one of his old colleagues told me. After she died, he became a different person. More thoughtful, more generous. He said she taught him that money was boring unless you did something meaningful with it. Tristan spoke at the funeral. He was in his 50s now, still married to Natasha, with 3 kids. My father taught me 2 great lessons, he said. The first was what not to do, how to be entitled and blind to others' worth. The second was how to fix it. When he cut me off, I thought he was being cruel. Now I know he was being kind. He was giving me the chance to rebuild myself into someone worth being. After the service, Victoria approached me. She was elderly now, her sharp edges softened by time. I owe you an apology, she said stiffly, for how I treated you, for the things I said. That was a long time ago. It was. But I've watched you build something remarkable. I've watched my son become a better man because you showed him what real worth looks like. And I've realized I spent my whole life measuring the wrong things. It's never too late to change what you measure, she smiled sadly. Bernard used to say that. He said Evelyn taught him that lesson. She taught a lot of people. She taught you best of all. We stood together in the cemetery, 3 generations of complicated history between us. The fruit basket, Victoria said suddenly. Excuse me? The fruit basket you sent me, with the note about raising a son who taught you what you deserve. Oh, that. I kept the note. It's in my desk drawer. Sometimes when I'm tempted to judge someone for not meeting arbitrary standards, I read it. It reminds me what happens when you mistake price for value. I'm glad it helped. It did more than help. It changed me. Just took me a decade to admit it. She walked away slowly, leaning on her cane. Tristan came up beside me. Did my mother just apologize to you? In her way. Miracles do happen. Sometimes the slowest changes are the most lasting ones. Is that Grandma Evelyn wisdom? No, that's therapist wisdom. I've been in therapy for 15 years. Best investment I ever made. He laughed. Better than the $85,000 ring? Way better. That ring is sitting in a safety deposit box. My mental health I use every day. Whatever happened to that ring anyway? I'm saving it for Evelyn. When she's old enough to understand the story, I'll give it to her. Not as a prize, but as a reminder. A reminder of what? That the most valuable things can't be bought. They have to be earned through knowing yourself first. The Foundation's 20th anniversary gala was approaching. We'd planned a major announcement. A new initiative to fund women's education globally with a $500 million commitment. The night of the gala, I wore Grandma's locket. Simple black dress, no designer labels. Henrik wore a suit he'd owned for 10 years. We could upgrade our wardrobes, he joked. We can definitely afford it. Why? These clothes work fine. Because every other person here will be in clothes that cost more than our car. Let them. We'll be the ones who know the difference between looking wealthy and being wealthy. The ballroom was filled with donors, foundation staff, scholarship recipients, and families we'd helped. The diversity of the crowd always made me proud. I spotted Evelyn across the room, talking animatedly with a group of scholarship students. At 17, she was confident and kind, asking them about their studies, their dreams. A young woman approached the microphone. She was one of our first scholarship recipients, now a doctor. 15 years ago, I was accepted to medical school but couldn't afford to go. My family had nothing. I thought my dream was over. Then I got a letter from this foundation. It said, "Someone believed in me when I needed it most. Now I'm passing that belief forward to you." Her voice broke slightly. That letter changed my life. Not just because it came with money, but because it came with belief. Someone I'd never met believed I was worth investing in. Today, I'm the head of emergency medicine at Mount Sinai. I've treated thousands of patients, and every single one of them benefited from the belief someone showed in me 15 years ago. The room erupted in applause. She continued, "The woman who started this foundation teaches us that worth isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in impact, in lives changed, in opportunities created. And tonight we're announcing a commitment to change 50,000 more lives over the next decade." More applause. I stood and walked to the stage. "My grandmother left me a fortune," I said to the crowd. "But more importantly, she left me a question. What will you do with what you've been given?" Tonight, I can answer her. I've tried to multiply what she gave me, not just the money, but the wisdom. Every person here represents that multiplication. Every scholarship, every medical bill paid, every school built. It's her legacy multiplying across the world. I pulled out a photo of Grandma and held it up. She never got to see this, but I think she knew it would happen. She believed in investing in potential, not just proven results. She believed everyone deserved a chance to become who they were meant to be. After the speeches, Evelyn found me. "Mom, that was beautiful. Thank you, sweetie. I've been thinking about Great-Grandma's letters, about what she wanted me to learn, and I think I get it now. She wanted me to know that I'm enough, that I don't need money to prove my worth, that the real inheritance is knowing who I am." I hugged her tight. "She'd be so proud of you." "I hope so. I'm trying to make her proud. Make you proud. You already do. Every single day." Later, when most guests had left, Henrik and I stood on the balcony overlooking the city. "Do you ever think about what your life would be like if you'd never overheard that conversation?" he asked. "Sometimes. But then I remember. That conversation didn't change my life. It revealed it. The truth was always there. I just needed to hear it to understand what I needed to do. No regrets? Not one. Well, maybe one. What's that? I wish Grandma could have met you. And Evelyn. I wish she could see what her inheritance built." "I think she knows," Henrik said. "Somehow, somewhere, she knows." A shooting star streaked across the sky. "Make a wish," he said. I closed my eyes, but I didn't wish for anything. I had everything I needed. Instead, I said a silent thank you. To Grandma, to Bernard, to every person who'd helped me understand that worth wasn't measured in carrots or bank accounts, but in choices and character. When I opened my eyes, Henrik was watching me with that expression he got sometimes, like I was the most fascinating person in the world. "What?" I asked, just thinking how lucky I am. "Because I have money?" "Because you don't care that you have money. Because you're still the woman who worked double shifts and helped strangers. The money just gave you more ways to be who you already were. Grandma planned that. Smart woman. The smartest." We went inside where Evelyn was helping the staff clean up. Not because she had to, but because she wanted to. My phone buzzed. A message from the foundation's director in Kenya. "School number 31 just opened. 600 kids enrolled. They sang a song about knowing their worth. Thought you'd want to know." I showed Henrik and Evelyn. 31 schools. Evelyn breathed. "That's incredible." 31 so far? I corrected. "We're not done yet. Will we ever be done? I hope not. The work of helping people know their worth, that's never finished." That night, alone in our bedroom, I pulled out the safety deposit box key, the one for the ring I'd bought myself all those years ago. Tomorrow, I decided. Tomorrow, I'd give it to Evelyn with the full story. Not as a symbol of what I'd lost, but as a reminder of what I'd gained. The ability to know my worth without needing anyone else to validate it. The strength to walk away from people who diminished me. The wisdom to build something meaningful with what I'd been given. And most importantly, the knowledge that the greatest inheritance isn't money. It's the courage to become fully yourself. I fell asleep wearing Grandma's locket, dreaming of all the lives we'd touch tomorrow, and the day after, and all the days to come, because that's what it meant to truly know your worth, not in how much you had, but in how much you gave away, not in what you could buy, but in what you could build, not in the ring someone could afford to buy you, but in the life you chose to live. And in that quiet understanding, I finally understood what Grandma had known all along. The real fortune wasn't in the bank account. It was in knowing I didn't need it to be enough. I already was.